Number 5. Phoenix Forgotten. Phoenix Forgotten is a 2017 American found footage sci-fi horror directed by Justin Barber in his directorial debut and written by him and T.S. Nolan. Produced by Ridley Scott, the Ridley Scott. The film tells the story of the disappearance of 3 teenagers who set out to find the source of a widely reported 1997 UFO phenomenon known famously as, you guessed it, the Phoenix Lights. We all remember this, don't we? Okay, now the plot. Sophie Bishop and her boyfriend visit Sophie's parents' place in Phoenix, Arizona on the 20th anniversary of her brother's disappearance. In 1997, the family all witnessed the Phoenix Lights during Sophie's 6th birthday, which was, drumroll please, recorded. Several strange lights appear in a formation over the city before being chased by fighter jets. The family is convinced that they have witnessed UFOs via the old recordings, and Sophie now begins to dig a little bit deeper. In the tapes, Sophie's brother Josh begins investigating the Phoenix Lights with the help of his friends Ashley and Mark. Sophie interviews multiple parties regarding the trio's disappearance and the sightings in '97, only to find the group's abandoned car and a camera and one single tape. Sophie views the tape, obviously, showing the beginning of the group's epic journey to find out what caused the Phoenix Lights. We then see what eventually ensues of the poor trio in a horror movie about aliens. Yeah, shocker, right? Or who knows, maybe it has a happy ending. I like this movie a lot for obvious reasons, but it's like really fun, and I like the dated feel with the tapes, you know? As always, dudes, if you like what we do here at Top 5 Scary, throw us a thumbs up down below or even leave us a comment, you know? Number 4. Antrum. Antrum is supposed to be the deadliest movie ever made, and that's what it claims. It's like a fever dream, this movie. Again, not real, but supposedly real. You know? It's a movie. Antrum is proudly a 2018 Canadian horror film. Woo! Go Canada. Written and directed by David Amito and Michael Lacini, the film is divided into 2 parts, an opening and a closing narrative in the form of a mockumentary and a feature film. The mockumentary loosely tells the story of Antrum, a movie released in the late 70s that supposedly had effects on those who watched it. The bulk of the movie then is just kinda moment to moment what kinda happened. Antrum was developed by Amito and Lacini during the development of a separate project in which they were brainstorming scenarios that scared them. Their central idea would later become the basis of Antrum. This idea and concept of what it would be like to watch a supposed, quote, real cursed film. The filmmakers felt like it would make a great horror film, which it does. For the film's occult aspects, the writers studied multiple historical depictions of demons and the devil. It stars Nicole Tompkins and child actor Rowan Smith. Antrum made its world premiere at the Brooklyn Horror Film Festival in October 2018 and was nominated for several awards festival to festival. Uncorked Entertainment acquired North American distribution rights, releasing it on video on demand and pretty well all streaming services since like 2019. It received great reviews who praised its uncomfortable atmosphere, its uncomfortable acting, and creativity. Yeah, they kind of nailed it with this one. It's so 70s. Like, it feels like, again, a fevered night terror.
Number 3. The Void. Our next entry on this list is The Void, a 2016 horror flick by Steven Kostanski, another Lovecraft horror movie. Your host has a little bit of a bias, and this one's Canadian made, so I have to include it based on that alone. It also totally rocks, so there is that. The Void is another flick that feels like it time traveled through the mid-80s, and maybe it's just my personal taste, but that is very much a good thing. The Void seems like the kind of thing John Carpenter would have slapped his name on. A small-town deputy has his night wildly disturbed when he finds someone suffering from violent injuries, and after taking him to the local hospital, finds himself trapped in the hospital with his ex-wife, a nurse, who's dealing with a crisis of her own as the hospital is being overrun by an onslaught of mysterious injuries and madness. The two estranged lovers find themselves caught in a blood-soaked conflict between a sinister cult and some entity that appears able to revive the dead, albeit a bit twisted into horrifying monstrosities of flesh and bone. Now, if you're like me and you think The Thing is the greatest horror movie ever made, The Void feels like it could be its unofficial sequel. It's better than the actual sequel prequel to The Thing that they made. The special effects on the monsters are fantastic. If you're the kind of ghoul who loves puppets, prosthetics, and gallons worth of corn syrup blood, The Void has everything you are looking for in those 3 spades. And the plot is fun, and it has some good twists and turns, but let's be honest here. You're watching this one because it's got very gross monsters and really cool Lovecraft-inspired mythos of cults and a great god beyond the stars. You want my advice? grab a friend or two, order the largest, greasiest pizza your local favorite spot has, grab a 2-liter of something carbonated, and have a great Friday night with this one. The Void to me is what a good horror movie should be. Gross, scary, a little stupid, and a ton of fun. Number 2, Hush. Okay, enough movies about incomprehensible horrors from beyond the stars. Let's reel it in a bit, and let's get back to some comprehensible horror. Home invasion. Lock those doors. Oh, sorry, I forgot to turn the volume up. Hush is a 2016 slasher home invasion movie coming to us from Blumhouse horror icon Mike Flanagan, director of a ton of amazing horror projects like Oculus, Dr. Sleep, Midnight Mass, The Haunting of shows, and Hush is no exception to that rule. A deaf and mute horror writer, that's why I did that before, who lives alone with her cat in the woods with a few isolated neighbors around her, becomes the unwilling target in the most dangerous game when a twisted hunter decides to make her his prey. After hunting her neighbor with a crossbow, he sets his sight on her next. When he learns that his next victim is deaf and mute, it seems like he finds himself thrilled at the possibility of a challenge. Now, Hush could have very easily just been your run-of-the-mill slasher home invasion movie, but it stands a lot taller than that with some incredibly fantastic sound design. I mean, I would hope so, given the premise of the movie and the name of the movie. The movie is so tense and saves its sounds really effectively for when it knows it's going to be the scariest. Makes it a lot scarier than the usual horror movies with a bombastic booming soundtrack and tons of scare hordes. It lets you really breathe in the tension. The cat and mouse game between the protagonist Maddie and the unnamed hunter feels deeply personal, putting you smack dab in the middle of it, chewing your fingernails the entire time as you hope for the best. Please check out Hush. Now, number 1, Green Room. Coming in at our number 1 spot is one of my favorite horror thrillers of all time, Green Room. An A24 horror classic before that was even a cool thing to describe your movie as. A failing Midwestern punk band are trying to hit it big while traveling the Northwest, barely scraping by on instant ramen and van life when they agree to play a gig at a rural roadhouse. Absolutely thrilled at the prospect of getting paid for once, the band takes the gig without asking any questions, only to swiftly discover upon arriving that they are in bad company. The bar is ran and owned by a skinhead gang who don't take kindly to them whatsoever. After the bassist witnesses a crime in the eponymous Green Room, the band is trapped by the gang who refuses to let them leave. Alive. From here, the movie turns into a sort of reverse home invasion as the band tries desperately to escape the clutches of the gang by any means necessary. Green Room is tense. You are going to feel like you are trapped in there with them. If you've ever survived a local DIY show basement, then the sights of Green Room will look pretty familiar to you. Setting a high-octane horror movie in such a hostile environment that you'll recognize makes it feel all the more real. You know, I've seen countless horror movies in haunted houses, but I can't name that many in a bar basement. Green Room is horror at some of its best, taking a concept I guarantee you haven't seen before and exploring it beyond just a simple bloody slasher. Fantastic camera work, dark humor, and a gripping plot with lovable characters and truly hateable villains. We are 3 paragraphs into me talking about this, and I haven't even dropped the biggest bomb, which is that the leader of the skinhead gang is played by Sir Patrick Stewart in one of his most unhinged roles ever since maybe American Dad. I'd say he steals this thing, but honestly everybody delivers. Anton Yelchin also delivers one of the best performances of his career as the band's weary, tortured bassist. Go into Green Room expecting a super tense, shockingly gory, but amazing horror movie if you can brave it. Just make sure you get a stamp on your wrist so you can leave. Number 5, Midsummer. So, first up on our list of the scariest movies is gonna be Midsummer, a movie that may hold the record for the fastest time I have ever seen something become a classic. I think Midsummer became a horror movie classic roughly 30 seconds or so after we left the theater. And there are some out there who knock on Midsummer for not being enough of a horror movie, but I would like to say boo on you. I think that's mostly bogus, just because it takes place during the day, and because like Hereditary before it, Midsummer is that nice kind of elevated horror that doesn't just get your hair standing on end and your spine all chilled, but also manages to get under your skin and start to pick away at stuff you didn't even know you were insecure and scared about. Just a bit after Ari Aster had traumatized all of us out of ever looking at a stop sign the same way in Hereditary, we got Midsummer, which will ensure I will never look at a bear the same way ever again. While Hereditary picked apart at the foundations of a crumbling family, Midsummer instead takes us into watching a friend group and a young couple getting torn apart apart, both metaphorically, which is scary in a very esoteric way, and literally, which is scary in a wow, that's disgusting kind of way. After a horrific, sad tragedy claims the lives of most of young Danny's family, she and her boyfriend find themselves growing distant from one another. Things look like they're gonna change when her boyfriend Christian invites her to a Swedish commune with his classmates. What looks at first like an idyllic vacation quickly unravels when it seems that commune is a Swedish word meaning scary pagan human sacrifice call, and Danny finds herself at odds with a new family that seems to welcome her grief with open arms. Midsummer contrasts gorgeous visuals of the Swedish landscape with some of the most stomach-churning body horror I've seen in a Hollywood production recently. Do you know what a blood eagle is, my friends? If you don't, do yourself a favor and don't Google that, okay? And if you do, yeah, well, you just know how horrible that was in this movie, eh? I figured we've all seen Midsummer. It's non-stop scares, but somehow, if you haven't, let me be the 1000th person to tell you you should watch this movie. If you like spooky cult movies, this is probably one of the best out there. Just, don't be surprised if you can't bear some of the stuff that happens in this movie. That's a little pun about a bear. Now, my friends, if you're looking for more videos about horror movies you should watch, maybe some scary urban legends, stuff about SCPs, aliens, and just about anything freaky, well, subscribe to Top 5 Scary, because we got all of that and then some. Stay scared, stay subscribed. Number 4, Incantation. Coming up next on the list is going to be Incantation. It's the most recent one on this list. It just came out, and I guarantee it's not like anything else you've seen, unless you're a huge fan of Taiwanese found footage cinema, in which case, yeah, it'll probably be pretty similar to that, because that's what it is. Right off the bat, Incantation invites the viewer to join in on it, with one of the characters breaking the fourth wall and directly asking the audience to say a prayer for her daughter, which I think is such a good hook to immediately get you into a movie. A little bit of audience interaction, and then forming the movie as a found footage horror movie made it seem that much more real, like you kind of forget that you're watching a production. It immerses you into the characters as much as a movie possibly could. A young woman named Lee Ronan reveals to us that years earlier she broke a religious taboo by spying on a secret ritual, and as such cursed herself and her bloodline. And when her daughter is born, she finds herself being haunted by a malevolent spirit. This movie is like a buffet plate of horror genres. If you like haunted house stuff, demon possession stuff, exorcisms, well, this movie brings all of that to the table and makes all of it gripping and horrifying. And if you like really inventive, metatextual, postmodern horror stuff, well, the framing device and the found footage elements really pump it all up, and I wouldn't dream of giving away the movie's twists, but it has some that you genuinely cannot possibly see coming that turn the whole experience on its head. And admittedly, maybe this is more me telling on myself for having a very Hollywood-esque kind of centralized North American horror movie palette, but it's very refreshing to see a story centered around people I don't see often in movies and a culture I don't see often in movies, somewhere I don't see often, making an already inventive script just feel that much more fresh, you know? Don't be afraid of the subtitles, and don't deprive yourself out of Incantation if you're looking for a great new cursed movie to watch. Just, if you want my advice, definitely say your prayers before and after watching, you know, just to be absolutely safe. Number 3, Hellraiser 2022. The original Hellraiser is one of my absolute favorite horror films ever, which I think tells you just about everything you need to know about me. I mean, I love the Cenobites, and I love all the sights they have to show me. The original movie is scary, absolutely like gut-churningly disgusting, and it's a piece of special effect wizardry that still holds up to this day. It also gave us one of the best, creepiest horror movie icons with Pinhead. Originally dubbed the Priest, the tall, slender demon, or angel to some, who enjoys pleasure and heart-stopping pain in equal measures. So when they announced that they were going to reboot Hellraiser and also recast Pinhead, myself and a lot of fans were more than a little hesitant at a new take on the classic character, but then I found out it was being directed by David Bruckner, who made The Ritual and worked on VHS, and I knew the film was in good hands, and lo and behold, hey, it was pretty good. The visual effects and gore for the new film are some of the best out there. The new design for Pinhead is horrifyingly cool, trading out the old goth kid at a nightclub look for a terrifying, like, flayed skin design, making it look like she's wearing a costume when really she's just naked and had all her skin peeled, which is the most Hellraiser thing ever. And oh yeah, Pinhead's a girl now. Slip that in like it was nothing. For me, a Hellraiser film's most important quality above all else is it goopy and gross. Does it make me want to cover my eyes and not look at whatever's on the screen? Yeah? Then this is a great Hellraiser film, and I want to see more through cracks of my fingers, so give it a watch. I wish this one could have been in theaters. It's streaming on Hulu for those who get that, and available on digital purchase everywhere else. Go in, give it an open mind, if for nothing else than its gross out effects. I know that doesn't really sound like a pleasant selling point for a movie. If you're gonna see Hellraiser, that's exactly what you want. Number 2, Knock at the Cabin. Now, depending on how you feel, M. Night Shyamalan is either a total hack who's been coasting for years on a dwindling reputation, or is a misunderstood auteur who's one of the last unique voices in horror cinema, and it really doesn't seem like there's much wiggle room for where people fall on that guy. So let me know down below in the comments what you think about old M. Night. Genius or total goof? Knock at the Cabin is the newest Shyamalan flick starring Dave Bautista and Jonathan Groff. It's an apocalyptic psychological horror thriller, which is a great combination of words in my opinion. Bautista and Groff play parents of a young girl who are vacationing out in a cabin. But things take a dour turn when the family is apprehended by armed bandits who insist that they've seen prophetic visions of the end of days. And the only way to prevent the apocalypse from claiming the globes will be to sacrifice a member of their own family. That's all the recipe for a good thriller for me. Now, Knock at the Cabin just came out, and I haven't even had time to see it yet. I only get so much time away from the fog. I watch 4 movies a year, to be honest, and they're the same movies I've been watching since I was a kid. So we'll see if it stands the test of time and if it'll be a classic or a flop, but I've heard lots of great things from a lot of my friends who like these kind of movies. So, you know what? We'll catch up to this one, and I'll loop back around. I'll let you know how I feel. Keep an eye out for another video like this where I'll bring up Knock at the Cabin again. And number 1, The Exorcist. Hey, wait a second. The Exorcist already came out. That was like a long time ago. It came out in like 1973. I know they made some sequels and stuff, and you can always crank some more out, but we're getting a brand new Exorcist movie in 2023? Oh, and it's serving as a sequel to the original 1973 film, and disregarding all other sequels in favor of a new timeline. That kind of sounds like what they did with Halloween, you know, in 2018 when that guy David Gordon Green made a Halloween sequel that was a sequel to the original film only, and erased all the other so-so sequels and brought back the old characters and everything, and it was pretty good. And oh, David Gordon Green is directing this Exorcist movie too. So this guy's just got one trick then. He makes sequels to classic horror movies. We don't know a whole lot about the new Exorcist movie. In fact, if you go to IMDb right now, it's officially listed as Untitled The Exorcist Film, which I don't think is the catchiest name. That's probably gonna look a little bit busy on the movie poster. So far, the only confirmed details that we know for certain is that David Gordon Green is directing, and Ellen Burstyn will be reprising her role as the mother from the original Exorcist film. Just like how Jamie Lee suited up to beat Michael Myers around the block in Halloween 2018. Now, will this new Exorcist movie be good? Personally, I'm pretty optimistic. The 2018 Halloween is fantastic, and is my opinion the second best Halloween movie ever made, after the first one, which carries a lot for me. The other 2 in the trilogy didn't do much for me, but that's neither here nor there. We've had a lot of good possession movies coming out. The Conjuring franchise is mostly about that, so I think it would be pretty cool to see a new one from a guy who we all know can deliver a good legacy horror sequel and can bring up some scares and respect an old franchise. Number 5, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. A good tagline can really sell your movie, you know? In space, no one can hear you scream. You'll believe a man can fly. Absolute classics. In my opinion, there's few that go harder than the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre's bold proclamation and threat: who will survive and what will be left of them. The original Texas Chainsaw is a legend of horror, practically kickstarting slasher movies altogether. While there's a whole other discussion to be had about what could be considered the first true slasher movie, there's no denying that Chainsaw wrote the rulebook. Hulking monsters in a mask, a screaming final girl. Texas Chainsaw was writing the rules years before Michael Myers was chasing Jamie Lee. Texas Chainsaw is the classic slasher premise. A group of hapless young fools all fall victim to the kind of horrors that only exist in our worst nightmares. The Sawyer clan are a family of deranged hillbillies living in rural Texas who believe in using every part of the meat they hunt for their chili. They're not really interested in beef though. It's almost got a bit of a misleading name. You hear Texas Chainsaw Massacre and you imagine a sea of corn syrup, blood, and special effects that'll leave you needing a barf bag. And hey, don't worry. The stream of sequels and remakes that followed definitely do get there. The 2006 one is maybe one of the grossest movies I've ever seen. But the original is a much better made movie than any of that. It's honestly not nearly as gory as the title would have you believe, and would probably be considered tame by modern standards. I'd go so far as to say it's a masterpiece. Few movies capture the feeling of true insanity the way this one does. The screaming, the hooting, the hollering, being hunted by the Sawyers is the kind of fear fear that feels like it belongs in an evidence locker, not in a theater. It says something that in a study using Texas Chainsaw as a litmus test for audience perceptions of horror movies, the survey came back saying that the scariest thing in the entire movie was not the monsters or the chainsaws, but just the screams of the victims. Hey, enjoying what we do? We'd love if you toss and subscribe our way for more scary content every single day. Number 4, Sinister. Now, I normally don't like to bring science into a discussion about horror movies or about ghosts, but a recent 2020 study involving attaching heart monitors to viewers and making them watch horror movies while researchers tracked their heart rates apparently revealed Sinister to be the scariest movie of all time. Medically speaking, proof is in the pudding, or the heart rate. To be completely honest, I definitely see where they're coming from. I didn't need any sort of medical equipment to tell you I found Sinister downright terrifying. Sinister at first seems like it's going to be a pretty run-of-the-mill, corny ghost house movie, but after about 15 minutes my worries were put to bed and instead replaced by nightmares. A struggling true crime writer, played by a personal favorite, Mr. Ethan Hawke, moves into a house knowingly that was host to a series of grisly, horrifying rituals to some dark god. Hey, in this economy, you gotta take whatever deals you can. He moves in hoping that getting close to the scene of the crime will inspire his writings, and it sort of does, in a way, because he finds a series of films in the attic all showcasing the brutal things that have happened in his new home. And it does not take long before our would-be writer is obsessing over his home movie collection, letting it affect his work, his family, and his brain. Another great one where you're never sure how supernatural things are until you're extremely sure. Ethan Hawke rides the line well between kind of being dumb enough that you sort of think he deserves what's coming to him, but also sympathetic enough that you don't want to see him get grabbed anytime soon. A fantastic score sets the tone, leaving you always just a little anxious and your heart never quite slowing down enough to breathe. The scenes of the home movies in question are actually some of the scariest things I think I've ever seen in a Hollywood flick and definitely deserve special mention, as they're probably the highlight of the film. Disturbingly real enough to seem like they might actually have happened, and restrained enough as well that it never dwells on the violence too much, letting your imagination fill in all the horrible, horrible blanks. Number 3, Jacob's Ladder. While the first 2 entries on our list were pretty recent and well received, I want to throw it back a couple decades for our next entry and highlight a cult classic that could always use a little bit more love. Jacob's Ladder details the story of Jacob Singer, a Vietnam veteran who 4 years later, after returning home from the war, struggles to readjust to his normal life. Not helping matters much, no doubt, is the fact that Jacob keeps seeing horrifying monstrosities surrounding him every day. It seems as if since he's come home, nothing has ever been the same. The film shows us life through Jacob's tormented eyes. As he tries to navigate through healing and overcoming his personal demons, he is constantly haunted by real-life demons that seem to have a very vested interest in him. Matters only serve to get a lot more confusing when Jacob learns that other members of his platoon, back from his army days, have all been suffering similar things, reporting seeing the same monsters and being haunted. Desperate to find the truth, Jacob seeks out the cause of what's happening to him and his old friends, and ends up descending down a path of madness, learning things no man ever should. Worth noting is just how influential Jacob's Ladder is, serving as one of the direct inspirations for the legendary Silent Hill series of games, with Silent Hill 2 in particular taking major inspiration from the film's plotline, monsters, twists, right down to the protagonists even wearing the exact same outfit as a little homage. Jacob's Ladder is a little older than some of the other entries on this list. It is absolutely worth a watch and still worth your time. A great performance out of Tim Robbins and one of the most wild twist ending horror movies ever had. A bunch have tried to copy this. I'm sure you've seen a million hack writers copy it, but no one did it as cool as when Jacob's Ladder did it, so there. And actually thinking about it, I shouldn't even mention a twist, so there was no twist. Everything in Jacob's Ladder happens very literally. Go into it knowing that, okay? Number 2, Sinister. Moving. It's always stressful, isn't it? It's a huge pain. Well, Sinister is a 2012 horror film about an everyday family moving houses and all the trials and tribulations that come with that, like having to update your postal code on your information, unpacking your stuff and figuring out where all your art books are gonna go, and finding out that you moved into a house where a series of grisly rituals happened, sacrificing the previous family who lived here, and it's all been filmed and kept in a box upstairs in the attic. You know, just regular stuff the kids go through all the time. A struggling true crime novelist is trying to chase his glory days and intentionally moves into a house he knows where ghastly deaths took place in order to get close to the story so he can better research it and write a bestseller. He discovers a box in the attic full of film of all of the crimes and becomes obsessed with uncovering and exposing what happened, mostly so he can make a quick buck and get himself back on top again and make the late night circuit. As his obsession grows, it starts to affect his family and children in concerning ways, as everyone in the family starts acting stranger, having visions, hallucinations, and psychotic episodes, leaving you wondering if there is something much, much deeper going on in this house beyond a floundering author chasing a bestseller. Now, if you haven't seen this one, it's definitely worth going into this one as blind as you possibly can, because the twists and turns totally make this one. I spent the entire runtime of this propped up on the edge of the couch, my heart pounding, hoping that everything would turn out to be totally okay, even though I knew better. It's a horror movie, things never go great. The movie's got a stellar sense of dread that refuses to let go once it starts, and only lets you breathe out once the credits roll, and even then, not for very long. Fantastic performances across the board, but a special shout out goes to Ethan Hawke, who makes this thing. Number 1, Hereditary. Now, there are a ton of movies that could easily have taken the number 1 spot here, and I thought pretty hard about making The Shining number 1, since, you know, it's kind of a classic, but I figured a lot of people have talked about The Shining, and then I remembered the experience of seeing Hereditary in a movie theater, and how it was the only time in my life I've ever seriously thought about leaving a movie theater because I thought I was gonna throw up on the seats. I was so scared and uncomfortable. Hereditary is a 2018 horror movie from visionary Ari Aster, who also gave us the psychological horror movie masterpiece Midsommar, so Aster really just bangs out the hits. Hereditary is about as peak A24 horror movie as it gets. One of those ones where the monster is really a metaphor for generational trauma and all that. After the grand matriarch of a Midwestern family passes away, her daughter and grandkids begin to uncover the cryptic and terrifying truth behind their ancestry, trying desperately to escape the sinister legacy they've inadvertently inherited. This movie is terrifying in the worst of ways. It's not just jump scares or tons of blood. No. This is elevated horror. This is not your usual horror story. It really zeroes in on the way too close to home horror of watching a family break apart. It is gut-wrenchingly painful to watch, preying on really specific kind of fears. It's gonna get its hooks in you and have your teeth grinding for the full 2 hours runtime and for ages afterwards. If you've seen this, I dare you to look at a pigeon, a stop sign, cheese wire, or a treehouse ever the same after this movie. And staggering performances. Toni Collette goes for absolute gold and delivers one of the best performances I've ever seen in a horror movie, full stop. She needs an Oscar for most upsetting crying I have ever heard in a film, which is a category she would have no competition in. Hereditary might not be the goriest film or even the scariest movie I've ever seen or most upsetting. There's a bunch of Takashi Miike or Park Chan-wook films that would probably take that. But Hereditary is definitely one of the most viscerally scary movies I've ever seen. The kind that just sits in your gut and makes you think about it all day, like you were living through an actual nightmare. Watch only if you're truly brave. I know I made it sound absolutely horrible, but it is a great movie. Just don't be surprised if you don't sleep that night. Number 5, You're Next. Hey, family dinners are always a bit awkward, aren't they? You know, trying to get the gravy passed to you, trying to avoid an argument with your uncle about your career, and trying to elude the vicious sickos that are hunting you and your family for sport. You're Next is a 2011 slasher directed by Adam Wingard, who also blessed us with Godzilla vs. Kong, one of the finest films ever made. Made on a humble $1 million budget, You're Next is a horror movie that brings it to the absolute basics. One house, one troubled family, and 3 very dangerous psychopaths. An estranged family is meeting for a reunion at their summer home in the rural deep south, and newcomer to the family, Erin, is nervous to be introduced officially as her boyfriend's long-term partner. Now, tensions are high enough with the usual family drama before the first crossbow bolt pierces the window, as the family is being hunted by a relentless pack of bloodthirsty animal mask-wearing lunatics who seem to be doing this whole thing just for kicks. Watch the family fall apart under pressure, metaphorically and uncomfortably literally, as they're picked off one by one by their sick predators, until one of them starts to rise up unexpectedly against their tormentors. Now, if you were a fan of the Hotline Miami games, this is probably as close as you're ever gonna get to a movie for that 80s splatter feel and all the animal mask wearing lunatics. You're Next feels like a movie that got time traveled from 1984 in the best way. It's a throwback to the golden age of B-horror movies. Wet, gross, stupid, and in the darkest ways, really funny. This movie's almost a dysfunctional family comedy, if you can call it that. It's sinister, sick, gruesome, and hilarious, has an absolutely great sense of style, really cool soundtrack, and I guarantee you the main song from the movie is gonna get stuck in your head for weeks afterwards. Definitely check You're Next out if you're looking for some fluffy horror fun. I've got a DVD at home if you want to borrow it. Now, hey, ghouls and goblins, you already know that the best place for the scary video Hey ghouls and goblins, you already know the best place for scary videos on the web is right here, but if somehow you didn't know that, always a good time to learn, so why don't you subscribe so you never miss a scare. Number 4. The Color Out of Space. When we think H.P. Lovecraft, we tend to think of giant squid monsters and incomprehensible madness. Well, this movie's got one of those in folds, and it's not the squid monster. The Color Out of Space is a 2019 horror movie directed by Richard Stanley, adapting the H.P. Lovecraft story of the exact same name, but modernizing it slightly, bringing it up to the 21st century. The story details a father moving his family to his late father's farm, escaping the bright lights and humdrum of city life, moving to his hometown of Arkham, the exceedingly cursed city from Lovecraft's writings. What should be a breath of fresh air and lovely times in the cottage turns to a nightmare when an asteroid falls to the farm, releasing with it a mysterious color that seeps into the farmland. A color out of space, if you will. It affects the minds of everyone around the farm, all the animals, and begins to seep into the water and drive everyone to incomprehensible madness. Nick Cage plays the patriarch of the Gardner family, and let me tell you, there could not possibly have been a better actor for the lead in a movie about slowly going mad. I mean, Nick Cage on his absolute best day already seems like he's about 2 screws short of absolute madness, so watching him in this is a treat. You spend the entire time wondering if the insanity is taking him over and consuming his brain, or if that's just how Nicolas Cage talks and he thinks he's doing a New England accent right now. Color Out of Space builds really slowly, leaving you on edge the entire time, and when the madness sets in, it sets in hard as you painfully watch the farmstead fall, desperate that maybe, just maybe, someone will pull through against the immeasurable horror of some entity beyond the cosmos. It captures Lovecraft's writing effortlessly and brings it to the modern age flawlessly, with all the blood and insanity you could hope for.
Number 3. Creep. Creep is a 2014 American found footage psychological horror directed by Patrick Bryce and is filmed as found footage and does the genre well. Bryce portrays a videographer assigned to record an eccentric client insisting on filming numerous videos for his future unborn kid. Creep was inspired by Bryce's experiences on Craigslist. Bryce and lead actor Duplass refined the film's story during filming, which resulted in multiple versions of each scene and several alternate scenarios and endings. Struggling videographer Aaron accepts an assignment to travel to a remote cabin where he meets his client Joseph, who explains he has an inoperable brain tumor and is expected to die before his pregnant wife gives birth. With this, he wishes to have Aaron record a video diary for his unborn child, and throughout the videos, Joseph demonstrates behavior that makes Aaron a little uneasy, which leads in Joseph confessing some pretty heinous stuff to him. As an increasingly freaked out Aaron intercepts a phone call from Angela, who's actually Joseph's sister, and warns Aaron to escape. Joseph then attempts to stop Aaron, leading to with Aaron escaping. Then, at home, Aaron starts receiving items in the mail from Joseph, including a recording of Joseph digging a grave. Creepy. A DVD is then sent to Aaron offering an apology in a public setting, which Joseph then kills him from behind with an axe. Spoiler alert, Joseph, now calling himself Bill, later receives a phone call from his newest target as he places a DVD of Aaron's murder alongside recordings of his past victims. That's scary. Yeah, I saw a play about a gruesome Craigslist ad once. They can get pretty disturbing. The film is widely known as one of Netflix's best found footage genre movies, and there's some great jump scares in there for you. Check it out yourselves. Number 2. UFO Abduction, the McPherson Tape. UFO Abduction, also known as the McPherson Tapes, is a 1989 American found footage sci-fi horror film written, produced, and directed by Dean Eliotto. The film focuses on a family who are being terrorized by extraterrestrials during a birthday celebration. The late 80s and the early 90s were ravished by an overflow of popular paranormal genre movies and TV such as The X-Files and Unsolved Mysteries. The film begins with a brief introduction that proposes the film as legitimate and one of the strongest pieces of evidence for ETs yet. On October 8, 1983, the Van Hees family gathers in Connecticut woods to celebrate 5-year-old sister's birthday. One of the brothers uses his handheld camera to record the night's events. The evening passes relatively uneventful as the family celebrates. However, after a small power outage, the brothers walk to the neighbors to investigate, and the three eventually come across an extraterrestrial spaceship landed in the woods and are shocked to see 3 small aliens walking around.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Holy sh**. Holy.
Yeah, that's creepy. They flee in a panic after the aliens notice them. Yeah, I would too if I saw them just walking around the forest. They return to the house and load shotguns, but are divided on whether they should remain in the house or leave. Classic horror movie move. After a while, they assume the visitors have left, but notice all their watches have stopped. They conclude the party, but are terrified as the aliens attempt to enter the house through the windows and chimney. Eric, one of the brothers, shoots and brings an alien's body inside the place and puts it in the back room. After securing the house once more and turning up the radio to block out the voices, the others finally convince Michael, another brother, to put down his camera and resume their card game. From its position across the room, the recording camera glitches and records what looks like 3 small gray aliens emerging from the back room. The tape ends as the aliens close in on the family. The film claims that the Van Heeses' whereabouts are still unknown and that viewers should contact the producers if they have any information. Look, I'm the guy who wears the tinfoil hats. This is pretty good. I liked it. The footage from the woods, the small creatures, the Project Blue Book warning at the beginning of the film. It's a Sci-Fi's Friday night. Great film, and short, only an hour. And coming in at the #1 spot, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a 2003 American horror film starring Jessica Biel and R. Lee Ermey. Its plot we're probably all familiar with if we've seen the numerous takes on this classic movie. It follows a group of young adults traveling through Texas who encounter Leatherface and his murderous family, a remake of Tobe Hooper's 1974 film and the 5th of the franchise. Erin and her boyfriend and friends are on their way to a Lynyrd Skynyrd concert in Texas. While driving through Texas, the group picks up a severely traumatized hitchhiker walking in the middle of the road. After they talk with the hitchhiker, she takes her own life with a concealed pistol. The group contacts police where they are led to an old plantation house where Thomas Hewitt is waiting, also known as Leatherface. Erin escapes and heads towards the woods, but Leatherface, armed with his chainsaw, follows each of the concert-driven friends one by one in an all-out slasher gore fest. Yeah, I watched this movie when I was 11 years old. No wonder I can't sleep at night. Erin escapes into the woods with Leatherface chasing close behind her and her friends, but she eventually injures him and halts the pursuit. Leatherface suddenly appears in the road and slashes the car with his chainsaw, but Erin manages to escape. 2 days later, 2 investigating officers are killed by Leatherface while doing a crime scene investigation of the Hewitt home, and the narrator states that this case still remains open.
Come on back here, follow me.
Yeah, that's absolutely terrifying, alright. Seems like this franchise was loosely based around a cannibalistic family in the South and actual evidence, case, and trial of Ed Gein.
Number 5, Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. Who doesn't love taking a trip down to the 100-acre woods with Winnie the Pooh and all his funny friends? These beloved childhood characters are ready to shine on the silver screen. In a sequel to Pooh's Heffalump adventure, please welcome Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, an ultra-violent splatterhouse slasher set in the 100-acre woods, reimagining the beloved children's characters as bloodthirsty maniacs who spend a whole lot less time playing around and eating honey and getting stuck in trees and more time chasing people with axes and rusty pickaxes and stuff. Oh bother. Trailers and photos of Blood and Honey went viral pretty much immediately because I think everyone saw it and kind of did the same thing where we were like, that's real? What? Yeah, it is. Copyright law and public domain is a wild, wild thing. Winnie the Pooh is public domain, so you watching at home, if you want to make your own Winnie the Pooh movie, this is my invitation. You go right ahead. So here we are. We have an ultra-violent Winnie the Pooh movie. Something absolutely no one was asking for, but I'm glad we have anyway, because at the very least, I can't claim to have ever seen a movie like this, really. And you know what? Credit where it's due, it does actually look pretty unnerving. Pooh looks the most terrifying he ever has, a far cry from all of our nice memories of him. Piglet as well has gone from like a cute little cutie to like a hillbilly horror. Eeyore, my favorite, he's not around because if the plot summary on IMDb is anything to go by, Winnie the Pooh ate him. He's probably happier now, I guess. That's kind of what he always wanted. I think this will be a fun watch, kind of a movie to get a big pepperoni pizza and some snacks and a few friends around. I don't think it'll win an Oscar, but the novelty will do it for me. If it turns out to be a big success, director Rice Frake Waterfield has spoken out about how he wants to make an entire series of public domain slasher movies, eventually building up to a shared universe because everyone wants some of that sweet, sweet MCU money. Me personally, I would love to see the new Winnie the Pooh going toe-to-toe with Peter Rabbit in a horror movie Alien vs. Predator situation. I know they've had tension for years. Time will tell if this dream will come to light, but pre-production has already started on a Peter Pan movie in a similar vein to Blood and Honey, so expect a blood-soaked trip to Neverland sometime in the near future. But if you can't wait and you want more horror content right now, you don't need to grab a ticket to the movies. You can just stay subscribed to Top 5 Scary for more premium horror content literally every single day. We got scary stuff for every occasion, so click through and I'm certain you'll find something to like. But finish up this one first, okay? We got lots more movies to go. Number 4, Skinamarink. I love a low-down horror. Even better, like a low-down, low-budget found footage horror. Some of my favorite flicks are stuff like Blair Witch Project or VHS. It's a great way for lower budget productions to stand out, where you can't just rely on tons and tons of gore effects or CGI monsters to serve up scares and have to, use creative filmmaking. So let me introduce Skinamarink, a Canadian experimental horror film made on an absolute shoestring budget that has critics singing praises and double checking their hallways just to make sure no evil got inside. Skinamarink is about as bare bones as a movie can get. It was made on a budget that was less than the price of most used cars and was shot entirely on digital in the childhood home of the director, which I guess would technically make this a home movie. Skinamarink is one of those ones where really the less you know about it, the better, so I don't want to give too much away, so I'll give you the little IMDb teaser and hopefully that's enough to excite you. The son and daughter of a family wake up in the middle of the night, discover that their father is missing, and discover that something is happening to the house as all windows, doors, and entrances and exits to the outside world appear to just be vanishing. The director, Kyle Edward Ball, is making his cinema debut with Skinamarink, and prior to this he made short films on a YouTube channel inspired by commenters' nightmares that they had when they were young. Skinamarink is no different, with some reviewers pointing out that it was the kind of movie that made them feel like they were young again, wanting to pull a blanket over their eyes, afraid of boogeymen in the dark or monsters under the bed. So if you're looking for tons of action, movie monsters, blood splatters, Skinamarink is not really that at all. But if you want a slower, very down-to-earth, grounded, low-budget horror movie, Skinamarink will have you glued to the scene, glued to the screen. I literally can't read today. I'd say if you're a fan of stuff like the Blair Witch Project, you owe it to yourself to give Skinamarink a shot. Let's shout out as many independent Canadian filmmakers as we can.
Number 3 on this list is Rosemary's Baby. One of the scariest movies of all time, might be one of the most cursed of all time, and this curse might even affect you when you watch it. Slash Films writes, at a party, the film's composer, Christophe Comeda, fell off a rocky slope and into a coma that he never recovered from, similar to the actions that the witches take in the novel to get rid of Rosemary's friend. Then there's also the story of Sharon Tate, Roman Polanski's wife. Reportedly, Tate auditioned repeatedly for the role of Rosemary, which ended up going to Pharaoh. She makes a background appearance in one of the film's scenes. While the film was still in theaters, Tate was killed in her home by followers of Charles Manson. At the time, she was pregnant. All of these events stoked the fear and the interest of the public, giving the film a bump in popularity and an infamous reputation. Levin himself said that he had mixed feelings about the film, claiming that while it gave him access to exclusive literary circles, it also helped popularize the occult and Satanism, which was prevalent during that time period. There was obviously something going on with the creation of this movie, and people believe that it can also be passed over to the viewer. Clearly, tragedy was involved when this movie was being made, and some sort of spirit or some sort of demonic omen was afoot. That tragic luck will, in rare cases, come in the form of a curse to somebody who watches this movie. This could all be fake Reddit stuff, but there was a story of how somebody watched this movie and then 9 days after doing so, while on a hike with their family, fell off of a rocky slope and got put into a coma, just like what happened to Comeda. Maybe this was a coincidence, maybe this wasn't even true. I'm not really sure. All we can say for sure is that something haunted the actual production of this movie, and I don't think it's that much of a stretch to think that that haunting could continue to those who watch this as well. Number 2 on this list is The Omen. It almost just feels fitting that a movie called The Omen just happens to get you cursed if you watch it. Slash Film says, production on The Omen was controversial from the get-go. Executive Bob Munger, who pitched the original story, warned the producer about the dangers of making a film like this. If the devil's greatest single weapon is to be invisible, and you're gonna do something which is gonna take away his invisibility to millions of people, he's not gonna want that to happen, he said. During production, tragedy struck. Lead actor Gregory Peck's son died by taking his own life, and Greg's plane was struck by lightning when he was flying to London for the role. Mark Newfield, one of the film's executives, also said that his plane was struck by lightning when flying to LA. Stories like this continued to plague the production, resulting in the death of an animal trainer on set and a special effects artist involvement in a fatal car crash that recalled the fatality he created for the film. Per local reports, a sign on the site of the accident read, "Omen, 66.6 kilometers. Yeah, so this movie is all bad when it comes to curses, and apparently they pass over to the viewer as well. Now, I don't think that you're gonna get struck by lightning or anything like that, but some people have said that watching this movie has turned into a bad omen for their life. That after they watched it, things that should go their way just started doing the opposite. They got fired from their job for things outside of their control. Their spouse left them for no good reason. They got diagnosed with something that's really not very good. All just bad things that are pretty much out of their control. Maybe this movie is actually cursed, and watching it means that you will be too. And finally, number 1 on this list is Poltergeist. This movie has got to be cursed based on how many deaths are associated with its production. The movie was released in 1982, and it's not only one of the most famous horror movies of all time, but it also holds one of the most famous curses. Several documentaries have looked into how serious this curse was when they were making this movie, and also how it can be transferable to those who watch this movie. 4 separate cast members died while they were working on this film or immediately after it was finished shooting. That is a lot of cast members, guys, and far too many to just be a coincidence. These were big cast members too, literally the face of the franchise, Heather O'Rourke being one of them. Along with these deaths, there were also some really scary things going on here. Like a member of the crew becoming possessed and having to have an exorcism performed on him while on set. Also, the iconic pool scene with the skeletons, well, apparently they used actual human skeletons when they were filming it. This whole production was just messed up from the beginning, and since the movie was released, people believe that some people could suffer from watching it. There have been some stories of people becoming susceptible to demonic possession after watching this movie, similarly to what happened to that one crew member. Be wary of Poltergeist if you do choose to watch it, folks.
Number 5. The Lighthouse. From visionary director Robert Eggers comes The Lighthouse, a harrowing fable that teaches us the importance of respecting personal boundaries and respecting seabirds. Eggers is one of my favorite modern horror directors, whose work sits a cut above the most usual horror fare with The Witch, The Lighthouse, and The Northman, which isn't quite horror unless you're terrified of Norway. The Lighthouse is unlike any other scary movies you've seen. Actually, it's probably unlike most movies you've seen. It's kind of hard to define The Lighthouse under one genre. It's unsettling and definitely makes me feel all heebly-jeebly watching it, but it isn't horror in the traditional sense. There's no monsters or slashers, just 2 men, a lighthouse, a whole lot of seagulls, and enough cabin fever-induced madness to shake a lobster at. A rookie lighthouse keeper, played by Robert Pattinson, is assigned to keep a lighthouse on a small isolated island off the coast of New England, under the supervision of the island's crusty old master, Willem Dafoe. Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson are some of the best working actors out there right now, and the 2 of these titans absolutely show up for this, carrying this 2-headed character piece on their backs and speaking in some of the most hilariously memorable accents ever put to film. Seriously, Willem Dafoe's old nautical piratical accent in this thing needs to be taught in acting schools. I would do an impression, but I won't do it justice. The film is shot beautifully, the whole thing seeming like a mix between a bad dream and an avant-garde theater production, leaving you asking the entire time if anything you're seeing can be trusted, if any of it's even happening, or if the whole thing is all just one twisted nightmare between 2 very lonely, isolated men. Now, I can't say for sure if they went nuts because they weren't subscribed to Top 5 Scary, but I'm willing to bet that a little bit of entertainment from the best scary videos channel on the web might have helped some of that madness. So subscribe, maybe. Number 4. Annihilation. I've talked a bit about Annihilation before on this channel, and I will continue to do so until Annihilation gets the respect it deserves. That's my mission. I've never forgiven the movie-going populace for not seeing this one in theaters. Annihilation came to us from director and writer Alex Garland, who also gave us Ex Machina, a fantastic movie about having a crush on a robot. Annihilation is a cosmic horror story detailing the effects of an after an asteroid crashes to Earth, and a mysterious alien presence known as the Shimmer begins to manifest across a quarantine zone in a forest outside an army base. Everything the Shimmer touches starts to blend together, biological life merging, double helixes swirling in a big cosmic gumbo. The film is hauntingly beautiful as it is terrifying. Our protagonist Lena, played by Natalie Portman, is a US Army veteran who lost her husband in an unrelated combat mission. One day he shows up on her doorstep, convulsing violently, leading Lena towards the Shimmer. Learning her husband was involved, she ventures forward with a group of fellow researchers and soldiers to uncover what lies at the heart of the Shimmer, what's causing it, and if it can be stopped. The film is a visual treat with its lush vistas and uniquely terrifying monster designs. I've talked about Annihilation Bear before, and I will take any opportunity to talk about Annihilation Bear. I love Annihilation Bear. Slap a photo of him back there for me. Annihilation is the perfect kind of horror movie, simultaneously exploring complex themes of depression, grief, humanity's inherent nature and propensity towards self-destructive behavior, but it also asks even bigger questions like, wouldn't it be really yucky if a bear had a human skull inside its head that screamed like a dying human while it was roaring? Get you a horror movie that can do both, okay?
In at number 3 we have A Nightmare on Elm Street 1984. This one is sure to keep you up at night. A Nightmare on Elm Street follows a group of teenagers battling a killer who attacks in their dreams. We follow Nancy and her friends trying to figure out why they're being hunted and how to stop it. This was our first introduction to the infamous Freddy Krueger, a killer who is badly burned all over his body. He uses a gloved hand with razors to kill his victims. Nowadays we all know who Freddy Krueger is, but in 1984 a killer who hunts you in your dreams was truly terrifying. Nancy has to struggle to stay awake throughout the filmmaking, depending on caffeine to keep her awake for days on end. They slowly discover that they are being hunted due to their parents being involved with Freddy's death. Nancy's mum revealed Krueger was an insane child murderer who had been released on a technicality and then burned alive by parents living on their street seeking vigilante justice. They attempt to bring Krueger out of the dream so they can kill him in the physical world. Could you stay awake for 7 days to avoid Freddy? I couldn't. In at number 2 we have Psycho 1960. This was the original slasher film. When Psycho premiered in 1960 the audiences were screaming in horror. They could not believe their eyes. It took the world by storm and instantly became a classic for horror lovers. Alfred Hitchcock wanted to shock audiences and do something no one else had ever done before. The audience were horrified that Marion Crane, the main character, had been so brutally murdered. Never before had a main character died in a film, and here she was stabbed repeatedly within the first 30 minutes. Hitchcock even received an angry letter from one man claiming his daughter is now refusing to shower thanks to this film. The film continues when Marion's sister starts to wonder where she is. Marion had stolen money from her previous job and was hoping to make a new life when she stumbled into the Bates Motel. Lila hires a private detective to look into the disappearance. Once he goes to the Bates Motel, he too never returns. When Lila and her partner Sam go to visit the house, they see Norman Bates in the window. They go to the police to report all of the mysterious disappearances, where they are told that Norman's mother, has been dead for 10 years. Later it is revealed that Norman Bates had multiple personalities and had been acting as himself and his mother since her death, killing unsuspecting women who visit the motel. It might not seem like much now, but this film was as terrifying and horrific as films came in the 60s and paved the way for the horror genre. Freaked me the out. I saw it at 4. Accidentally. And finally in at number 1, The Conjuring 2013. We're all very familiar with the Conjuring franchise, but did you know that the set of each film is thought to be haunted after many spooky happenings on set? The Conjuring series is based on the real experiences of paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren, so it makes sense that the spirits that the films are about might not be too happy about it. The first film released in 2013 and followed the story of a family who've just moved into a farmhouse when they start to suspect something is not right. They call in Ed and Lorraine to help save them from spirits within the home. The hauntings do not stop when the camera stopped rolling. Some of the cast members began to notice unexplained bruises over their bodies. Similar to this, the lead actress Vera Farmiga woke up one morning and noticed 3 claw-like scratches on her thigh. She said they didn't hurt, but it looked as though someone with long nails had dragged them over her skin. Vera seems to have got the worst of the hauntings and also woke up between 3 to 4 AM when she began filming. She was a little spooked, as the witching hour is something that has been talked about during the film. Was the set haunted by the original ghosts? I guess we'll never know, but probably. Kicking off at number 5 is The Blair Witch Project, the 1999 supernatural horror film that made me never want to go into the woods again. This found footage style film had audiences captivated when it premiered, largely because people thought it was genuinely real, including me. Its marketing campaign was morally questionable but brilliant, leading people to think that the movie's main characters were missing or even dead. They even went as far as having missing persons posters featuring the actors at screenings. This low-budget documentary-style horror movie follows film students Heather, Mike, and Josh as they head out into the woods in search of the fabled Blair Witch. The three friends find themselves at the center of strange occurrences. They seem to be lost and walking in circles, unable to find the road or their car. Horrific noises come from the woods, their stuff is being messed with, ritualistic items keep popping up, and paranormal happenings are running wild. 1 year later, they're still missing, and only this raw footage is found. The film preys on our most basic fears, not needing any fancy special effects or grotesque monsters. You feel like you're being haunted, but you're never sure by what exactly, until it's too late.
Coming up next at number 4 is Jeepers Creepers. Just the title of this film is enough to drum up some fear in me, primarily because all I can hear is that old creepy song of the same name. You know, the one that plays ominously throughout the movie whenever the creeper is on the hunt. And by creeper, I mean the demonic beast in the movie, not the director. Moving on. If you know, you know. Every 23rd spring for 23 days, the creeper comes out of hibernation with a hunger for human body parts. Siblings Trish and Derry find this out the hard way when they witness a rusty pickup truck dumping what looks like a body wrapped in blood-stained sheets down a drainage pipe. Of course, after being run off the road by said truck, they decide to go check it out and discover an underground chamber with walls and ceilings covered in corpses. While the storytelling leaves room to be desired, this 2001 horror flick features some pretty unfiltered gore. We see numerous dead bodies, a leg being chewed off, a decapitated head getting its tongue bitten off, and so much more. Jeepers Creepers also delivers such a terrifying villain. The Creeper is a massive, muscular, winged demon with razor-sharp teeth. From his head, he can expand a wide fringe of webbed appendages, sort of like an insect or a dinosaur from Jurassic Park. Interestingly enough, the film is loosely based on a true story, which always makes it worse, and that's fact. Of course, there's no flesh-eating winged demon, but it is inspired by a man who murdered his wife. He was spotted dumping her body by a pair of siblings, and subsequently tailed them for miles. What makes this film so scary is that you cannot escape the ancient demon, giving you a sense of impending doom throughout the entire film. You will definitely need to pray before and after watching this flick, and hope that the creeper doesn't find any of your body parts particularly appealing.
Number 3. As Above, So Below. As Above, So Below is a 2014 American horror film written and directed by John Eric Dowdle and co-written by his brother Drew. The title refers to the popular paraphrase of the second verse of the Emerald Tablet. The film is presented to the audience as found footage, following a documentary's crew's experience exploring the catacombs of Paris. The film was produced by Legendary Pictures and distributed by Universal. The film received negative reviews from critics, but grossed more than $40 million with a huge profit from only a $5 million budget. The plot. Scarlett Marlowe is a scholar continuing her past father's research for the Philosopher's Stone. Scarlett travels to Paris with two friends, and using codes from her research, they solve a riddle leading them with coordinates to the catacombs of Paris. They sneak underground and the group wanders the caves. They encounter cultists, ghosts, visions, you name it. They find a Templar, Assassin's Creed looking tomb and see and read some pretty jarring stuff. Statues in the walls come to life, and it goes all Indiana Jones but like scary. The car scene? Like, yeah, what's that about? That's horrifying and downright disturbing. Dude, this movie is gonna leave you gasping for air, literally. But I really liked this movie. It's shot GoPro style, and I love that humid, dingy cave stuff. Look one way in the dark and then the other way. Yeah, I'm just sweating thinking about that scene. Number 2, The Taking of Deborah Logan. It's one of the scariest movies I've ever seen, I'm not gonna lie. This movie is horrifying. If you're down for like old witchy ghost lady vibes on a Friday night, and you like jump scares, we got a winner, folks. A 2014 gem. This American found footage supernatural horror film is a first for the director Adam Robidoux, who co-wrote the screenplay. Set in Virginia, it tells the story of a documentary crew making a film about Alzheimer's patients who uncover something sinister while documenting one woman. The film was released right around Halloween time, and you can still catch this on like every streaming service. A team of students who want to create a documentary about Deborah Logan, an elderly woman who has Alzheimer's, films and records her daily life. Then Deb starts to act a little bizarre. They notice that her actions defy normal explanations and express something a little bit more supernatural. Things escalate after they record an audio of Deborah talking about sacrifices and snakes. Oh yeah, like real witchy old lady vibes, I'm telling you. After some talk about an ancient ritual that makes people immortal, some dark cultist kind of stuff, and voila, Deb goes on a spree and tries to kidnap them all. They find out that she has quite the sinister history and that maybe she's not a really good fit for the star of a documentary, more like the star of an exorcism. Yeah, like that kind of stuff, you know? GoPro, night visions, old lady witchy standing in dark corners, good old fashioned thrillers, you know? Good for the whole family, right before bedtime, in the dark. And the number one spot, of course, is The Visit. This movie's kind of like the last movie, with all the witchy vibes, but like way more subtle and way more terrifying. Yeah, I don't like when there's like creepy shit just running around in the background shots, right? Like that's what scares me the most, the background shots. The Visit is a 2015 American found footage comedy horror film written, produced, and directed by M. Night Shyamalan. The film centers around two young siblings, teenager Becca and her kid brother Tyler, who live with their mother, who's had a pretty gruesome past herself. After finding their grandchildren online and wanting to meet them, the kids' grandparents invite them to spend a week at their farmhouse. Aw, how nice. Like a little Hansel and Gretel type stuff. Exactly. The film was released by Universal Pictures and it grossed about $100 million worldwide, against only a $5 million production budget, so yeah, this one killed it. Good job, guys. But it got mixed reviews though. I don't really know why. This movie's like really scary and well done. The plot. The kiddies are getting ready for a 5-day overnighter at the grandparents while their mother Loretta goes on a cruise as a much needed break. Loretta reveals that she has not spoken to her parents for like 15 years. The teens plan to record a documentary film about their visit using a camcorder. It's shot kind of GoPro style with some classic camera falls on the floor, what's in the background type fun. I'm not going to spoil anything in this movie, but if you like screaming things, crawling around all in the middle of the night, yeah, then this movie's definitely worth a watch. Check it out.
Number 5 on this list is The Crow, a 1994 gothic horror superhero movie that's earned quite the cult following since its release. Similarly to some of our other entries on this list, it had one of the most tragic filming processes ever. Slash Film writes, The Crow had a slow and rocky production. According to Cursed Films, during pre-production, a mysterious figure called the offices and left a voicemail asking production to stop. This was followed by multiple tragedies. An electrician was badly burned, others were injured, then Lee died as the film was finishing filming, shot by accident when a prop gun malfunctioned. Since the film was late in production, the person responsible for handling weapon safety wasn't around to supervise the scene and wasn't able to ensure that all props were safe to use. Lee's scenes were completed by using a mixture of body doubles and then revolutionary CGI, but the film kept that charged and sad legacy, which has become impossible to separate from the story itself. Who was that mysterious figure and how did they know something bad was gonna happen? People have speculated that the phone call that was made was from a spirit from the other side. They believe that by going against the spirit and not doing what it said resulted in the tragedies that occurred. This could also be the curse that affects you if you watch this movie. A few people have reported getting a strange call a few days after seeing this film from an undisclosed number. The phone call will start super weirdly and will eventually tell them to stop doing something in their life. Just like what happened with the movie, if they continue to do whatever they were told not to, bad things will occur. Number 4 on this list is The Innkeepers. The Innkeepers is a really interesting one. You see, this movie is cursed based on where it was shot. Slash Film says, interestingly, West, who was the director of the movie, decided to make the film after hearing that the hotel where his crew stayed while shooting his previous film, The House of the Devil, was haunted. Well, the hotel that inspired the film is actually in the film, said West in an interview with IndieWire. The staff at the hotel believe it's haunted. The whole town believes it's haunted, so it has this kind of mystique quality to it. While West said that he's a skeptic and doesn't believe in ghosts, he and the cast lived in the hotel for the duration of the shooting, and he did see some doors opening and closing and TVs turning on and off, and mentioned that everyone who was sleeping there had very vivid dreams. Sarah Paxton, the star of the film, said that at nights her door would also violently fly open. It might just be because this is a scary movie and people get scared, but some people have reported similar occurrences happening in their home after they watch this movie, as if the haunting that happened at that hotel where they shot it somehow comes into the space where the movie is played. I'm not sure how much of this one I believe, but they did film it at an actual haunted location, so you never know.
Number 3, Killing of a Sacred Deer. Coming up next is going to be Killing of a Sacred Deer from Yorgos Lanthimos, who has one of my favorite names in cinema. I needed at least one really psychological horror movie on this list that I figured most of you probably haven't seen. Like all of Lanthimos' filmography, Sacred Deer is relentlessly weird. If you want to watch a movie that's going to leave you shaking, sweating, and asking yourself in your dark living room, what the hell did I just watch? Then you're gonna love Sacred Deer, okay? A heart surgeon named Steven, played by Colin Farrell. He's got a perfect life, 2 children, a successful career, and a very, very strange relationship with a mysterious young boy named Martin, played excellently by Barry Keoghan. We learn that years earlier, Steven had operated on Martin's father, but failed to save his life, and since then has kind of taken Martin in and kept an extremely odd paternal relationship with the exceedingly strange boy, who seems determined to force himself into Steven's family by any means necessary. As Martin begins to uncomfortably ingratiate himself with Steven's children, their health starts to worsen in mysterious, paranormal ways that hospitals can't explain, and it seems like Martin knows a lot more than he's letting on. This movie feels like an actual honest-to-God nightmare that somebody filmed. It's kind of hard to describe. It doesn't really have jump scares. It's got next to no gore. There's like blood, I guess, but most of the horror comes from this unending dread, this creeping, unsettling feeling in the air that everything you're seeing is wrong. Every single line of dialogue in this movie does not sound like it was written or performed by a human being. I know that sounds like a bad movie, but everyone is performing so well that the atmosphere is like a mile thick. Everyone just talks in a way that's not in a way you expect or you're used to. It seems like everyone's from a different planet ever so slightly. It's so surreal, it feels like an extended dream. There's a scene where Barry Keoghan's character is describing how he and his dad used to eat spaghetti the same way, by swirling noodles around a fork, and it's a very innocuous conversation, but the whole thing around it is so chilling, it genuinely had me sweating. If there's anyone who thinks Barry Keoghan isn't gonna make a good Joker, please watch this movie and then come right back to me. This guy is so good at being a lunatic. This one is not gonna be for everybody, I'll be straight up. If you like your horror a little bit artsy, like if Midsommar and Hereditary totally spoke to you, Killing of a Sacred Deer probably will as well. But, you know, if you're looking for something with like a guy in a mask who's breaking through windows and pulling on Jamie Lee Curtis's ponytail, this might not be up your alley. If you're looking for something splattery and splashy, well, it might just leave you extremely confused. Number 2, The Ritual. Coming up next on the list is going to be The Ritual from director David Bruckner, part of the horror collective that contributed to the cult classic found footage movie VHS, as well as directing 2020's The Night House. The Ritual is one you can find on Netflix, and if you don't load it up after this video immediately, we're probably gonna have an issue. A group of college friends meet together after a shocking tragedy claims the life of one of their friends in a random robbery. Now, before the incident, they all had made plans to hike in the woods of Sweden, and let me just pause here for a minute. Is it a bit odd that 2 of the scariest horror movies made in the last 10 years involve a group of friends going out on a vacation to Sweden? If I'm learning anything from this list in contemporary filmmaking, it's that it's not nearly as welcoming as I thought. But I digress. The friends go to Sweden in their late friend's honor and discover that it is really not the best of ideas when things turn horribly wrong very quickly. Discovering an elk gutted out in the woods, they suspect there is a lot more out in those woods than just the wildlife. The Ritual is kind of like if the Blair Witch Project and the Wicker Man loved each other very dearly and had a beautiful baby and they let it play with Midsommar on the weekends. You get to watch a friend group at odds with themselves, lost in the woods, deal with mysteries of a secret Nordic cult, and it's got lots of good, creepy, supernatural cult stuff, and I don't want to spoil it too much, but I'll say it's got one of the coolest monsters put to film in recent memory I can think of. I would love a statue of that thing. And finally, coming in at our number 1 spot is going to be The Mist. Directed by Frank Darabont, who is probably the king of adapting Stephen King's works into films, having directed The Shawshank Redemption, The Green Mile, and The Mist. Interestingly though, unlike The Green Mile and The Shawshank Redemption, which are both very accurate depictions of the source material, The Mist deviates a little bit. It's got an alternate ending which is way darker than the original story, but here's the catch. Stephen King actually says he prefers it, which has to be the highest compliment possible. If the guy who wrote the original terrifying story can watch the movie and say, you did a better job. He certainly didn't say that about Stanley Kubrick. If you don't know the plot of The Mist, like all Stephen King movies, it takes place in a small town in Maine when a massive thunderstorm has descended upon the community. It focuses on a group of ordinary people caught in a grocery store locked in as a mysterious mist starts to encircle the town, and strange creatures from beyond this world start to complicate things. This thing is very tight, focusing on what happens to normal people when put up against the most overwhelming odds imaginable, trapped with eldritch horrors threatening them just outside their little sanctuary of suburbia, and trying to protect your family from all the danger. It is tense as all get out. If you like monsters and creative monsters too, oh man is The Mist a treat. They hide them well, you know, in the mist. You never get too good a look at any of them, but that wouldn't be much fun. The way they do it here, letting you catch glimpses here and there, and letting your mind fill in all the horrible details and all the tentacle abominations, oh baby, that's horror at its finest. Reminds me a bit of Cloverfield in that regard. You know, The Mist might not be the scariest movie ever made, but it is an absolutely great one that is often forgot about sometimes when we discuss great horror movies. It's out there on Netflix, so you got no reason not to. In fact, I tried pretty hard to curate this list of mostly stuff that was streaming on Netflix so you could watch them after I was done talking about them. Don't say the casual Crypt Keeper doesn't do anything nice for you now.
In at number 5 we have The Descent, 2005. First up, we have The Descent, a British film from 2005 about a caving exhibition. We follow a group of 7 women exploring a cave that's never been explored before. The only way out of the cave is through it, so they travel deeper and deeper until they're trapped deep underground. We watch as one by one they meet a horrible fate, some accidental climbing mistakes, others descending into madness. They soon find out they are not alone in the cave and are being pursued by terrifying hordes of crawlers, but what we might today call Wendigo. They are a race of cave-dwelling humanoids who have adapted to near constant darkness and lost any previous trace of humanity they may have had, becoming monsters in the process. The girls start to turn on each other while they struggle to survive in the darkness. They created 2 different endings for this film after deciding that the British ending was too dark for the US audience. In the US ending, our main character wakes up in the cave and crawls to the surface back to her car. When she is driving away, she pulls over and vomits, and when she leans back in the car, she is startled by the ghost of Juno sitting in the passenger seat. However, in the British version, they reveal that this was all a trick of her mind, and she wakes up back in the cave, having never escaped at all. The film ends with the screams of the crawlers getting louder as they surround her. This one is enough to make anyone scared of the dark. Coming in at number 4, we have Ringu, 1998, aka The Ring. We have all heard about the adaptation of The Ring, but have you seen the original, more horrifying one, Ringu? The story follows a reporter and her ex-husband as they investigate the sudden death of her niece, who died of a sudden heart failure with an unnaturally horrified expression on her face. She then finds out that her niece recently visited a cabin with her friends. Each of them had died the exact same way on the exact same night. She visits the cabin to find out what could have caused them all to die so suddenly when she finds the unlabeled tape. After watching the tape, she understands that they had all been cursed as she was now. Things become more tense when Reiku's young son watches the tape, starting the 1-week countdown before he too dies. She has to break the curse or she and everyone she cares about will die in less than a week. Their discovery takes them to a volcanic island where they can discover that the video has a connection to a psychic who died 30 years ago and her child. In the end, they discover that the only way to break the curse is to copy it and show it to someone else, passing it on to them, dooming them instead of you. It's a good thing no one has a VHS player anymore.
Number 3, Saw. Now Saw is hardly underrated or some hidden gem. They made 9 of them. I think everyone knows about Jigsaw and his sick little games by now, but that doesn't stop the original 2004 film from being one of my go-to Halloween movies every year. Equal parts detective thriller and equal parts stomach-churningly terrifying, there's a simple elegance to the first Saw. Before the storyline became so convoluted you needed a historian to help you navigate the timeline and secret double crosses, backstabs, betrayals, and secret jigsaws, there was just 2 men, a freaky little puppet, 1 rancid bathroom, and a saw. The movies get ridiculous very fast, with Jigsaw's level of control varying from superhuman levels of planning to straight up bad man, bad guy in some of the sequels. And the first is like that too, but there's something so terrifyingly real about the first one, you know? It feels like the worst intrusive thought you could ever have. Imagine someone had been stalking you, making a list of your wrongdoings, and wanted to test if you truly appreciated your life, if you'd be willing to fight for it. As a kid, even though I knew he was a fictional character played by a guy whose actually pretty nice in real life. I was terrified that one day I would wake up chained to a radiator, hear that hiss and crackle of the TV static, and see that evil little puppet grinning up at me. The first movie cuts all the fat, pun intended, and gets in good as you watch Jigsaw's two victims descend to madness at a breakneck pace when they realizes the consequences are more dire than they could have ever assumed, and there isn't a way for either of these men to leave in one piece. It's gross, it's lowbrow, it is absolutely edge of your seat horrifying. I think the first one has one of the most off-putting atmospheres I've ever seen in a horror movie. Every inch of that set just looks like it was abhorrently rancid. It looks like it's not even safe to be breathing in there. It just feels jagged and sticky, you know? Like you gotta take a shower after watching. Number 2, Hereditary. Now, it would not be a scariest horror movie list without Hereditary. Hereditary, to date, is the only movie I thought, hey, I might have to walk out of this because I genuinely don't think I can take what's happening. Now, the more likely scenario is that I'm a massive wimp, but the other very likely possibility is that this movie is just gut-wrenchingly terrifying. Hereditary tells us the story of a doomed family seeking to uncover and hopefully break the generational curse placed on them as a gift from their passing matriarch, who seems to have been up to some shadier business than anyone could have known. After a heinously tragic accident, the family finds themselves descending into a web of madness, distrust, and fear. Hereditary is probably one of the scariest movies I've ever seen, and there's barely so much as a jump scare. There's very little in the ways of ghouls, goblins, or ghosts in this one, just itchy fear. That fear of being unable to protect your family, watching it all fall apart, and the age-old fear of wondering if perhaps you've got some sort of ancient, unavoidable satanic curse placed on you and your family. You know, regular stuff. The movie builds agonizingly slowly, leaving you waiting and wondering the entire time if there really is anything supernatural happening or if you're just driving yourself mad wondering while you watch. If you like a slower burn kind of horror movie, then Hereditary is perfect for you. It's full of the kind of nightmarish imagery that isn't leaving you anytime soon, and that's where it scares best, showing you something for just a second or two that you would never want to see in your life, ever, not dwelling on it too long, but just enough to stick in your head like a bad dream, and then appear in your bad dreams every night thereafter. Number 1, Halloween. Okay guys, I'm gonna come clean, I'm gonna be honest. This whole channel is all just a big ruse for me to talk about the Halloween movies. All the other videos are nothing more than a facade for my real goal, to talk about Michael Myers and his sometime sister Laurie Strode. The Megalodon, ghosts, aliens, all my lesser muses. Compared to some other entries on this list, or even its many sequels, the original Halloween is downright tame in terms of blood and gore. In fact, there's actually barely any blood and no gore. A stark contrast to Rob Zombie and David Gordon Green's approach to the boogeyman. The original really focuses on the cat and mouse game between the Shape and his obsession, Laurie Strode. Most horror movie protagonists, usually the protagonists, have condemned themselves to some karmic fate. Like I mentioned, the guy from Sinister chose to watch all those scary tapes. The counselors who venture to Camp Crystal Lake every year, despite the warnings, it makes us, the audience, not really feel bad for what's about to happen to them because we know they sealed their doom. But Laurie Strode is a completely innocent bystander to all of it, who just has the unfortunate stroke of bad luck of just happening to be the wrong person standing in the wrong place when Michael sets his eyes on her, spurring a 4-decade-long obsession. That terrifying implication that it could happen to anyone, that the boogeyman could be behind you at any time, making you his next victim solely because you were in the way. Some horror movies from the 70s and 80s start to show their age, but masterful film work like Halloween doesn't. The way the camera lingers on Michael with that haunting synth soundtrack still riles me up to this day. That tension in the air when Michael starts to go after Laurie's friends, first disguising himself in that ghost sheet. Hey! Other movies always walk the line with what Michael is, with some of them offering detailed backstories. Sometimes he's born out of a dark cult, sometimes he had a troubled childhood and no one but Rob Zombie understood him. But in the original, we get the most concise, simple, and effective explanation. He's evil. He's just pure evil behind those black eyes, and that is the scariest answer imaginable.
Number 5, The Last Broadcast. This 1998 American horror film, written, produced, and directed by Stefan Avalos and Lance Wheeler, tells the story of a documentary filmmaker named David Lee and his investigation on the fact or fiction murders, in which got him convicted in a 1995 case, apparently with the murders of his team one night during an expedition to find the mythic Jersey Devil in the Jersey Pine Barrens. The film is shot mockumentary style and employs the found footage technique. The film is believed to be the first full-length feature film shot and edited entirely on consumer-level digital equipment, and on a budget too. I love this. I'm all here for it. Main character Lee seeks to discover the truth behind these killings while making his documentary. 4 men go to the Pine Barrens, where a psychic leads them to the apparent site. During the hunt, they broadcast a live show simultaneously via TV, internet, and amateur radio. They enter the Barrens, but only one emerges alive, as the others are brutally murdered.
The likely suspect would appear to be Stephen.
Oof, spooky. Seward, the only suspect, is then charged with the murder of his team. During his murder trial, Lee receives a box containing a damaged videotape reel, which he at first assumes is the tape from the team. With the murders caught on the tape, a blurred image of the real killer is seen, and is shocked to discover that the killer is the filmmaker himself, Lee. This is a great one. I really enjoyed this movie. It's low budget, young artists. It's a pretty good storyline too. And number 4, Man Bites Dog. Man Bites Dog is a 1992 Belgian violent comedy crime mockumentary written, produced, and directed by Remy Belval, André Bonzal, and Benoit Poulvard. I tried, sorry. Who are also the film's co-editors, cinematographers, and lead actor. The film received the André Cavins Award for the best film by the Belgian Film Critics Association, and since its release, the picture has become a cult classic, and received a rare NC-17 rating for its release in the US. Yeah, I'd up that rating to a rated R if it was me. After watching bits and pieces, I can't even say that without getting chills. Look, it's pretty disturbing stuff. Shot in black and white, it's gory, like very gory. Like if Tarantino made a gory snuff film. Yeah, I actually can't even put a clip into this because the found footage parts are way too disturbing. The film follows a crew of filmmakers following a serial killer, recording his horrific crimes for a documentary they are producing. At first though, dispassionate observers, they find themselves increasingly caught up in the chaotic and nihilistic violence, eventually becoming accomplices themselves. Ben, a witty, charismatic, and an easily enraged sadistic serial killer, takes the filmmakers and the crew to witness and watch the murders, explaining why, how, and when he chooses his victims. The viewer witnesses this grisly killings and crimes in graphic detail. The camera crew becomes more and more involved with the murders and even help Ben. During filming, 2 of Ben's crews are killed by Italian mobsters, and Ben and his crew have fun taking turns as they shoot the rival crew members while recording the entire process. Like I said, it's gory. Tons more gruesome killings, and Ben is finally arrested, but then escapes. At this point, someone takes revenge on Ben, and he finds his girlfriend and family all disturbingly murdered in revenge. The camera crew and Ben are all ambushed and shot by the rival mobsters. After the camera falls, it keeps running, and the film ends with the death and of the fleeing of the suspects. Only watch this film if you can stomach disturbing scenes. Trust me, it's pretty visual.
Coming in at number 3, we have Silence of the Lambs. So this film from 1991 doesn't have any ghosts or demons or anything paranormal at all actually, but what it does have is arguably worse. It has not 1 but 2 depraved serial killers. One, a charming but cannibalistic doctor who likes to eat human liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti. The other, a social pariah who murders women and uses their skin to make a woman's suit, both of which could be walking among you and I, and we'd never even know it. The story follows FBI rookie Clarice Starling, who seeks help from convicted serial killer Dr. Hannibal Lecter in solving a string of murders. The bodies of women are turning up, skinned and mutilated. In a game of psychological cat and mouse, the brilliant yet disturbed Hannibal Lecter guides Clarice towards the murderer in a series of cryptic clues. What makes this particular movie so unnerving is the sense of humanity that is brought to the most inhumane content. Dr. Hannibal Lecter is a villain, an extremely wicked one at that, yet you find yourself strangely rooting for him the entire time. He's charming, witty, and ready to disembowel you and string you up like Jesus at any moment. Its scare factor has stood the test of time, still being considered one of the scariest films to date. Silence of the Lambs was also the first horror movie to ever win Best Picture at the Oscars, and the 3rd movie to ever sweep the Academy Awards in all of the top 5 categories.
Moving on to number 2, we have Poltergeist. It's safe to say that this 1982 horror film scared so many of us growing up and gave us an irrational fear of TV static, clowns, and our own bedroom closets. Directed by Tobe Hooper and produced by Steven Spielberg, Poltergeist is one of the most iconic supernatural horror films of all time, and is certainly a film you'll need to pray before watching. The film follows Stephen and Diane Freeland and their 3 children. They're your typical all-American family in their seemingly perfect suburban home until it becomes an epicenter of paranormal activity. Their 5-year-old daughter Carol Ann begins conversing with something through the TV late at night. That is when the haunting begins. First, it's things moving on their own in the kitchen and around the house. Slowly, the haunting becomes more and more malicious and Carol Ann is sucked into a portal from inside her closet. The Freelands learn that they're up against a horde of poltergeists being controlled by an entity called the Beast, and that their home was built on top of a cemetery. Set at the peak of the climax is one of the iconic scenes that many people cannot seem to scrub from their minds, when the son is attacked by the evil clown and pulled under the bed. So maybe by today's standards, or for those accustomed to today's limitless digital effects, this film may not be the scariest. However, in the 80s, it was considered terrifying, especially since the film itself is said to be cursed. 2 cast members died after filming, both of them were highly unexpected and sudden. Dominique Dunne played the older sister and suffered a violent death shortly after the film's release. She was strangled to death by her boyfriend. Heather O'Rourke, who played Carol Ann, passed away at the age of 12, just years after the film's release. The actress who played the mom said in an interview that actual human skeletons were used as props for filming. This has never been confirmed nor denied, but could certainly drum up some bad karma on set, I'd say. Alright guys, we've made it to number 1 and we have The Exorcist. Get ready to pray because in the number 1 spot is a film so disturbing that it had moviegoers throwing up, others fainting, and some even having heart attacks in theaters. Allegedly, that is. The Exorcist is the quintessential horror film and is considered the scariest movie of all time.
The 1973 supernatural horror film follows a little girl possessed by the demon Pazuzu who begins acting erratically after making ill-advised contact with the supernatural. The situation turns dire when Regan becomes increasingly more violent and disturbing, so her mother enlists priests to save her soul.
So many iconic scenes make The Exorcist an absolute nightmare. Regan's head spinning around, her projectile vomiting green goo, and when she walks like a spider down the stairs, just to name a few. Her mutilated face is also incredibly haunting, being covered in deep cuts and scars. Perhaps the most disturbing fact comes from the sound design. Much of Regan's grunting and groaning were made using pig squeals. When the demon is finally exorcised from her, the squeals we hear are pigs being led to their slaughter.
I didn't know
I didn't
that.
know this. I thought you did. I was gonna act surprised, but I thought you knew.
I'm surprised.
Ah, that's disgusting.
Yeah, yikes. The Exorcist was said to be cursed after a studio fire destroyed much of the set and 9 people associated with the film's making passed away by the end of production. Priests were regularly called in to bless the cast, crew, and set.
To make matters worse, the film is based on a true story. The book in which the film was based on was inspired by the real-life exorcism of a young boy.